Welcome to Avenue Vineyard Community Church online teachings. Our prayer is that you would learn and grow through listening about the teachings on Jesus and the Holy Bible. Please come visit us in the Crystal Kids Youth Center in Edmonton, Alberta. Our address is 8718 118th Avenue Northwest. You can also download our free app from our webpage, www.avenuevineyard.com, to help keep you connected to our church family. Donations, tithes, and offerings can be made through our app and on our webpage. Thank you for listening, and God bless.
So it's been a while since we've done this, so I'm going to see if I can figure out how I can do the old Sherry screen thing again. And step one looks to be complete. Something's happening here. And let's go back up to the top. And there we go. I think I got something going on here. There we go. I think that's working. Can I get a thumbs up? Perfect. Awesome. Alrighty. So as you guys can see, the reflection for this morning is titled Number Your Days, and it is connected to the canticle, the reading that Dan did this morning during the worship. So as we get started, once again, I want to welcome you guys to this new year. And what a start to 2022. Here we are. And this is the second Sunday of the new year. So hopefully you're building some momentum to engage another year. It was, we got, yes.
You got January 9, 2021.
Oh, gosh, look at that.
Sorry, just as a Google, everybody.
Yeah, I forgot to change the date. I think somebody noticed that last week. I should have caught that, but there we go. See, and that kind of illustrates the point is like, I don't know if I've gained a whole lot of momentum for engaging the new year yet. Because again, like with school being postponed a week and the boys not heading back and it being a bit of an extended Christmas, New Year's break, whatever. And again, it's part of this trying to figure out what exactly does normal look like as we go forward. Not sure if you're in that headspace, not totally sure if I'm in that headspace, but we do need to go forward. And I think it'll be good for us to be able to go forward well. And in years past, back when we could sort of take time, days, weeks for granted, I think that even rolling into the new year, after New Year celebrations and just rolling into January, in some ways, I think we kind of took that for granted as well. It was just, hey, it's a new year, life continues, and it's just more of the same old. But it's not that way. It hasn't been the last couple of years. In the midst of this continuing COVID season, we're still finding ourselves in a bit of confusion and complication. What's going on and which voices should we be listening to and which voices should we be ignoring? And again, in the midst of this, I think that this is maybe a reminder for all of us that we really need to lean into God. Hopefully, we've been able to connect with some other voices that we can trust and that we can rely on. But again, there's still a lot of confusion out there. And the best thing I think that we can do is to lean into God. And to kick off the new year last week, Terry Lozon shared a great message with us, I think, reminding us of Jesus' great invitation to put on his yoke. Jesus came to show us a new way and a way that was not supposed to be a burden, not saying that it wasn't going to take some work, but Jesus was going to show us a way, his way, that was supposed to be in certain ways, in many ways, light. It was to enable us to put down the heavy burdens, to put down our weighty cares and, the things that drag us down, the brokenness that hinders us. Nothing is a surprise to Jesus, and nothing is distracting his good plans for you or me. Nothing is distracting his plans for our church or this world, no matter how sideways things might seem. So Terry's message, I do think, was a reminder and an invitation that God can really do more in us in many ways by us doing less. If we can really tune our hearts to what God is inviting us to step into, not being driven, resting in him, listening to him, hearing his voice, quieting our hearts, and really turning our hearts towards him. Part of this process, I think, of learning to find God in all things, finding God in all circumstances. So even just maybe a question for each of us to consider in this gathered time this morning is, where do you see him in your life this morning? Maybe you can recognize a way that God already spoke to you this morning, as you're getting your breakfast or your coffee or sharing a bit of conversation with a family member, grabbing your cup of coffee, or maybe during the worship, maybe God was speaking something to you in that regard, or, maybe during our time of reflection here this morning. So just as a quick reminder, I'm going to review, this is the main passage, I guess, that Terry shared from his message last week. And it's from Matthew chapter 11, starting at verse 28. But it starts, then Jesus said, "Come to me, all of you who are weary and carry heavy burdens, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you, let me teach you, because I am humble and gentle at heart, and you will find rest for your souls." And, our souls, that is like that deep part of us, the seat of our consciousness and awareness. And it's kind of at our center, and where the Holy Spirit can really connect with us. And that's where God is really hoping that we can find this deep sense of rest for our souls. "For my yoke is easy to bear." And you might remember Terry's visual aid that didn't turn out so well, his handmade yoke. But it's, this good reminder that Jesus has a yoke for us, and it's easy to bear. And the burden that he gives us is meant to be light. And I do want to read that passage again, but I'm going to read it from a different translation, because sometimes when we're familiar with something, we can sometimes kind of miss its significance. So this is the same passage, but I'm reading this time from the First Nations version of the New Testament. And this is a translation that was done by a number of Indigenous leaders, partly connecting with the Indigenous culture. So First Nations version of the New Testament, this is how it reads, Matthew chapter 11. "Come close to my side, you whose hearts are on the ground, you who are pushed down and worn out, and I will refresh you." And, even just reading it in that way, after 2 years of dealing with this COVID stuff, certain parts of us might feel a little worn out and might need some refreshing. "Follow my teachings and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble of heart, and you will find rest from your troubled thoughts." And, when things don't always go according to plan, or when we have an idea how things might be going and then it takes a turn, sometimes that can trouble our thoughts. So we might need some rest for those troubled thoughts. "Walk side by side with me, and I will share in your heavy load and make it light." So once again, this is this invitation to lean into God, to lean into Jesus as we walk forward into this new year. So thank you, Jesus. I really need the help, and I'm guessing I'm not the only one. And as we jump into this new year, sometimes the new year brings with it this rah-rah attitude that we need to storm into the new year with vigor and with zest, and, seize the day, seize the new year, make it the biggest and best one yet. Often this comes with New Year's resolutions or New Year's goals. And maybe you're feeling some of that this year, maybe you're not. And I know for me, maybe I'm just getting old, and who knows, maybe I'm getting a little bit grumpy. But I'm not feeling rah-rah this year. That isn't to say that this can't be a good year or even a great year, but my reflections entering this new year have been a little bit different this year, but I still think that God is in them. And some of the thoughts that I've had, they have been really significant for me anyway. So I'm going to share some of that this morning. Hopefully there will be something here that resonates with you guys too. I'm not feeling rah-rah, and I am getting older, but I don't think that that's the reason why I'm not feeling all rah-rah. I suspect that it kind of has something to do with the fact that we are still enduring COVID complicatedness. Now, I know some of you were chatting about this in the groups this morning, but I did look up the stats on January 7th, just 2 days ago, and this is just a small snapshot because this is like one day over the last couple of weeks. But on Friday the 7th, Alberta had over 6,000 new cases of COVID reported in one day. On Friday alone, over 6,000 new cases. So over the last 2 weeks, this has been a huge increase, and I'm hopefully they were mostly this Omicron variant, which seems to be much more mild. And if I'm hearing correctly, this quick spread of a more minor variant will supposedly help the whole thing pass more quickly. But just because, I'm not feeling rah-rah about this year, it doesn't mean that I'm not excited for it. I am. I am excited for it, but in kind of a more subdued way, I guess, if that kind of makes sense. Reflecting on the new year really got me thinking about the last couple of years, and I realized that in a certain sense, for me, it almost feels like I lost a couple of years. I lost opportunities to hang out in person with many of you guys. I lost opportunities to participate in some of my kids' activities, the boys' sports. I lost some life opportunities that I would like to engage in, holidays or adventures. And I think many of us can relate to this, feeling lost opportunities that we're not going to get back. And I know for myself, I lost opportunities because I was waiting for the circumstances to change. Again, at the beginning of this, I was one of those naive people that thought, oh yeah, this will just take a few months and then we'll be back to normal. And then it wasn't. And it's been this waiting game, and things are about to change and then it'll be more normal, and then it's not. And things are about to change and it'll be more normal. I'll wait to start this project until things are more normal. I'll wait to get together with so-and-so because shortly things are going to be more normal, and then they're not, and they're not, and they're not. And I was waiting for things to be normal, and it didn't come. So I've missed out on things. I have lost opportunities. And on top of it, it's been 2 years now, and I don't know that we really know what normal looks like anymore. I don't know that it's going to go back to the way things were, and who knows what the new normal might look like. So in a sense, 2 years that I'm not getting back, 2 years that we're not getting back. And personally, I don't really want to miss out on any more opportunities. I know that things look a little bit different. Maybe I need to adjust some of my expectations so that I can still engage some of the opportunities that are there, but do it in a way that is sensitive to the days and times and circumstances that we're in. So I want to look for intentional ways to appreciate and get the most out of my days. Starting now, I don't want to sit around waiting around for normal anymore. So I want to intentionally look for ways to get the most out of my relationships. And as part of this, we reflected a bit on this pre-Christmas, and I kind of sat on this idea. I've been dwelling on this idea. I've been stewing on it, I guess. And I'm really falling in love with this Jesuit idea of finding God in all things. And it's, simple little catchphrase, finding God in all things. And what does that look like for me in my daily life? How can I do that practically in my daily life, in my daily endeavors, in my daily conversations, in the interactions that I choose, in the interactions that I don't choose that kind of get pushed on me? The phone ringing or other circumstances that just crop up that in some way I have to deal with. Where is God in each of those opportunities? Where is God in each of those interactions? How can I find him? How can I see him? And I think the practical pursuit of trying to find God in all things, looking for God in all things, to me, it's felt like a pretty cool adventure to try and have that mindset and that perspective, and just trying to be aware of where's God, what's he doing, what's he saying. And last week, inspired by Terry's message, I did share 3 ideas with you that I would encourage you to wrestle with. I'm going to highlight them again this morning, but we briefly considered the story of the Magi. Last week, we were kind of in this Epiphany week, celebrating the revelation of Jesus, which we often relate to the story of the wise men coming to visit baby Jesus. And the birth of Jesus really did change the history of the world. It turned the world upside down. Emmanuel, God with us, God breaking in on our human world. This was a huge revelation. And it was so big that many characters in the story actually got personal messages and encouragement from the angels themselves. Mary got an angel. Joseph got an angel. The shepherds, they got a whole bunch of angels. But the Magi, guys that were in a sense the most separated from God, in a sense, they were the furthest away from this thing that God was doing. In a sense, these guys probably could have used an angel the most. These guys, really could have used a voice from heaven the most to bring them revelation. Well, they didn't get it. They got a star. And on one hand, it's kind of special. It's a star. But on the other hand, it's not like it was the only star in the sky. It was one of thousands. But there was something special about this one. And there was something special in the interaction. They took notice. They could have missed it. They could have ignored it. Just another star. But they didn't. They took note. They noticed that there was something different. They were wise. They were looking for God in all things. So they followed this subtle sign. They followed and they investigated for a long time. And it eventually led them to Jesus. They found God when they searched. So idea number 1, I guess, from last week, the Magi with the star, was just this life lesson to look for God in our daily activities. Don't take anything for granted. Find God in all things. Thought number 2, partly coming right out of Terry's message, was just this idea that with Jesus, when we see him, when we rest in him, when we embrace his yoke, we really can do more by doing less. We don't need to strive. No stress, no striving. A year of more by doing less. A year of more by finding and embracing rest in Jesus. And idea number 3, we can find rest, we can find God in all things. And idea number 3 was just this reminder that we need to do these things with a soul that is awake. We can join with David by giving our souls a pep talk. We read it in the Psalms, "Awake, O my soul." In Psalm 57, David said this. He says, "Be exalted, O God, above the highest heavens. May your glory shine over all the earth." And then he speaks to himself. He gives the soul a pep talk. "Awake, O my soul, wake up. Be spiritually alert. Awake, O my soul, wake up. O lyre and harp, I will wake the dawn with my song." So 3 themes for the new year. Finding God in all things, this idea that with Jesus, in Jesus, resting in him, we really can be doing more by doing less. And awake, O my soul. And as I've reflected on these ideas this past week, they really connected with another thought that I think might help. Instead of charging into the new year all rah-rah and chasing New Year's resolutions, maybe we can find God and embrace rest and feel more spiritually awake by spending some time contemplating on death, which maybe sounds a little counterintuitive, and maybe that wasn't what you were expecting me to say. But I think that there can be something in this for us. Maybe we can experience more life this year if we spend a bit of time reflecting on death. Now, here is the reading. Again, this is the canticle that Dan read during the worship. And this does come from the Celtic Daily Prayer devotional. That's my main devotional. And this is the Midday Prayer. And it's partly influenced, it's inspired by Psalm 90, if you want to take a look at Psalm 90 later today. But this is what it reads. Teach us, dear Lord, to number our days, that we may apply our hearts unto wisdom. O satisfy us early with thy mercy, that we may rejoice and be glad all of our days. And let the beauty of the Lord our God be upon us, and establish thou the work of our hands. And let the beauty of the Lord our God be upon us, and establish thou the work of our hands. That last bit is that idea of, resting in Jesus and him establishing the work of our hands, letting him do the heavy lifting. But again, just to read that first part again and consider this, let this idea sink deep in your heart and hit home. Teach us, dear Lord, to number our days. Number our days, realizing that our days are numbered. That's where this kind of ties into death. We only have so many days on the earth. And if we number our days, it sort of helps us gain this perspective that the days that we do have a certain value to them. And if we recognize the value in our numbered days, then we might better be able to apply our hearts unto wisdom. So teach us, dear Lord, to number our days, that we can do just that we can apply our hearts unto wisdom, finding God in all things, finding rest in Jesus in our daily activity, experiencing life spiritually awake through numbering our days and being wise with the gift of them. So not a depressing reflection on the end of our days, but simply remembering that we will have an end. So let's daily appreciate and celebrate the gifts that we've been given. And, one of the events in the last couple of weeks that partly got me reflecting in this direction too was I don't remember the exact day, but it was not too long ago that Brandy recently celebrated the anniversary of her heart transplant. And, that is something that the Dunbar family has been doing since the transplant, is remembering this. This is a significant thing. In a very real way, Brandy has been able to reflect on what her life, the significance of her life, the significance of the transplant, the great cost that event was. It was a sobering and appreciative remembering, a celebration of the gift of life. And I was reflecting on this idea this past week, and then I got the latest magazine issue of Faith Today in the mail, and the cover story was a reflection on death and dying. Death is something that we're all going to face at some time in one form or another. The death of a loved one, or our own eventual deaths. Whether you're the prime minister, an emperor, a prince, or pauper, it's one of the great equalizers. 6 feet of earth makes us all one size. But our culture does not like the idea of death. We run from it. We're immersed in a culture that denies or distracts and distances itself from this uncomfortable fact. And the more that we do so, the more death's sheer inevitability can in some ways terrify us. One of the observations that I think that we can see in our culture through the COVID pandemic is that our culture is existentially afraid of death. The fear kind of lurks deep in our bones. And culturally, just think of our funerals. Think of how we typically run funerals. They often aren't about death. We don't want to go there. So what do? We have a celebration of life. Often we don't even have open caskets anymore. We just have the best looking picture that we can find of the person while they were still alive, as we have this celebration of life. We try to side skirt the issue of death. Well, why? We try to hide from death. We try to run away from death to avoid the consequences. And I think there is actually I know that there's actually a pretty big movement today in the biohacking scene, where people are actually trying to use science and technology to figure out how we can live as long as possible. There's one guy that I know of that he is quite bold in proclaiming that his goal is to live to be 200. He's taken a lot of vitamins and supplements. trying to cheat death, trying to hang on to life as long as he can. I don't really have interest in living to be 200. I don't think. I can't imagine being very active. I mean, I'll be content to live to 100 or so. We'll see. But why this big push towards anti-aging and longevity? Why do we avoid death? Is there a part of death that we could look at in a different way, where we could see it as honorable, something even to look forward to? I listened to a podcast this week with an author that cited a finding that 20 to 30% of healthcare spending is actually spent on the last 2 weeks of people's lives. That's a lot of money for a very small life extension. And while they might be able to extend your life for a little bit longer, is it really a quality type of life? And in the podcast, he then shared a story about a visit that he had to the country of Bhutan. Now, in Bhutan, they think about death a lot differently than we do here in North America. Bhutan is a very underdeveloped country. Apparently, there is not a single stoplight in the entire country. They also don't do fast food. There is no McDonald's or Starbucks. They don't even have a Tim Hortons. So I don't know how they're ever going to get by without Tim Biebs. This is a country that is not big on comfort or convenience. And yet, they consistently rank as one of the happiest countries in the world. There are a number of reasons for this, but one reason that the researchers have really zeroed in on is that they've noticed that the way that people in Bhutan view death and the way that they relate to death is quite significant. In Bhutan, death is effectively, it's just a part of life. It's an accepted fact of life. It's not a separate thing to avoid. It's just part of the experience of living. And when someone dies in Bhutan, their ashes are put in these little clay pyramids that are called sasas. And these little clay containers get placed all over the country. They're a visual reminder everywhere you go. On every road bank, you will see them piled up. On almost every windowsill in towns and villages, they're lined with these little clay containers. These little clay containers are everywhere. This constant visual reminder that death is a reality of life. And the people there, they're actually told, it's culturally encouraged to reflect on, to think about their own death. They're encouraged to do this anywhere from 1 to 3 times a day. And a lot of their art and their plays and some of their other cultural stuff, it just centers around this concept of death. And while this author was there, he met with a Buddhist monk. And this is how the monk described the focus that they put on thinking about death. He said, pretend that you are walking along a mountain trail, and at the end of the trail, there is a cliff. Now, here's the thing. The cliff is death. And we're all walking on that mountain trail right now. So don't you want to know that there is a cliff at the end of the trail? Because if you know that, it might change the way that you walk that trail right now. You might take in the wilderness a little bit more. You might pause and reflect on the things of beauty and embrace gratitude and appreciation. It might change the conversations that you have with other people along the way, knowing that each step is bringing you closer to that cliff. But in North America, it kind of seems like we don't want to know about the cliff. We do our best to forget about it or distract ourselves from the fact that it's there. And by ignoring death, not keeping it in mind, we miss out or lose out on something that might positively change or impact our behavior. When we think about death, usually it has a way of aligning our priorities and making the trivial things that we can get caught up in life fall away. And this can lead to happiness by having a positive behavior shift. They've actually done studies of this in the US. The author referenced one where they had a group of people thinking about something random, meditating on something random. Then they had another group that was told to daily reflect on their mortality, to reflect on death. And then they tracked them over a certain period of time. And they did find that the group that was reflecting on their death, they had a much higher report of satisfaction and happiness, because that reflection, it helped them. It was helping them make better decisions in their daily lives about how they wanted to spend the limited time that they had left. And I think that this is a theme that the Bible, that we can find in the Bible as well. The Bible doesn't shy away from this theme. So if it's in the Bible, if it's something that's appreciated there, it's probably a good idea for us to wrestle with and consider too. So maybe as we walk into 2022, it should be something that we reflect on a bit. Maybe it can help us align our priorities in a better way, a healthier way. It might help give us perspective so that we don't get as distracted by minor irritations. In the big scheme of things, again, if we're reflecting on the ultimate, the most important, the minor irritations aren't going to be as big a deal. We will waste less energy and waste less attention on things that are minor in light of eternity. In light of eternity, what really is worth our time and attention? And just to leave you with this thought, and maybe some of these quotes can generate some conversation here at the end of our time together. I want to wrap up this morning and some of these ideas just by reading some good thoughts on the topic that, you might want to link to one of these to kind of help you reflect. But here goes. I'm going to read through a number of them here, some Bible passages and some quotes. But again, with this idea, recognizing that there is a cliff that one day we're going to face, the Apostle Paul says this in Philippians: "For to me, to live is Christ, and to die is gain." For Paul, death isn't a bad thing. Death is gain. If I go on living in the body, that's great. It'll mean fruitful labor for me. I can apply my life in some good ways. But he's wrestling here, but what should I choose? Death isn't a bad thing. I do not know. I'm torn between the two. I desire to depart and be with Christ. And that's part of what we need to keep in mind. Death is not the end. Death means connection with Jesus. It means union with Jesus, which is something that we can look forward to. And Paul himself says, that is better by far. But the people he's talking to, what is more necessary? It is more necessary for you that I remain in the body. He still sees that he has work to do here on earth, but death is not something to be avoided. He sees that there is a gain in that. There's a quote, and I think we've maybe used this one before. This comes from a guy named Jim Elliot. He was a missionary who, again, gave his life in service to Jesus. And he said, "He is no fool who gives what he cannot keep to gain what he cannot lose." Again, it's a perspective where death was not a bad thing. Death is union with Jesus. I can give my life on this earth, I can give it for something bigger, this eternal purpose, and this life with Jesus. So I can spend my life here on this earth on something that is more significant, that is deeper. And death, it's something that I cannot lose. There's an eternity with Jesus to look forward to. C.S. Lewis made this reflection, and I know that we have used this quote a number of times, but I think it's just such a significant idea. If you read history, you will find that the Christians who did most for the present world, which is what we want to see and what we want to do, we want to do something significant for the present world. We want to be a part of something for the present world. We want to invest in ourselves. We want to invest in our families. We want to invest in our community in a significant way. Well, how do we do that? According to Lewis, it's precisely those who thought most of the next world. Again, the eternal significance. It is since Christians have largely ceased to think of the other world that they have become so ineffective in this. So maybe reflecting on our mortality, numbering our days, maybe that can help us do more significant things in the present. In Hebrews 12, the writer there says, as for us, we have all of these great witnesses who encircle us like clouds. This crowd of faithful people that have gone before us. They've embraced their death. They gave their life faithfully. So we must let go of every wound that has pierced us and the sin we so easily fall into, these more minor irritations that hold us back. If we can remember those that have come before us and the way that they've given their lives, that can help us number our days to apply our lives in a similar way. Then we'll be able to run life's marathon race with passion and determination, for the path has been already marked out before us. And it's interesting, the word that gets translated in this passage as race or marathon race, it's actually, it could be translated as obstacle course. The Greek word is the word agona, and it means agony or conflict. So it's an overcoming. The assumption is that this race isn't going to be easy, but that the proper path to run has been set before us. The path has been set, but it might be a challenge. And he continues to encourage us, saying, we look away from the natural realm and we fasten our gaze onto Jesus, who birthed faith within us and who leads us forward into faith's perfection. His example is this, because his heart was focused on the joy of knowing that you would be his, that's you and me. He knew that what he was pouring his life out for was going to bring us to him. Because of that, he endured the agony of the cross. He endured the agony of death, and he walked right into it. And he conquered its humiliation. And now he sits exalted at the right hand of the throne of God. And then we're back to Paul. As for me, my life has already been poured out as an offering to God. His life wasn't something that he had to hang on to. His life wasn't something where he had to pursue longevity and take thousands of dollars of vitamins and supplements to extend. He was pouring his life out as an offering to God. The time of my death is near, and that wasn't a fearful thing for him. I have fought the good fight. I've been faithful. I've finished the race. I have remained faithful, and now the prize awaits me, the crown of righteousness, which the Lord, the righteous judge, will give me on the day of his return. And the prize is not just for me, but for all who eagerly look forward to his appearing. Death isn't the end, and we don't. And I guess that's part of the perspective that we're encouraged to take forward from this biblical perspective. Death is not the end. Death is a new beginning. We get a glimpse of that from the fifth gospel. And I'm being a bit playful here. I'm referring to the Lord of the Rings. But there's a scene towards the end of the story. If you're watching the movies, it's in the last movie of Return of the King. But Minas Tirith is under siege, and Pippin is starting to despair because it seems like this might be the end. They're all going to be killed. They're all going to die. And Pippin reflects, I didn't think it would end this way. And Gandalf looks at him a little puzzled and says,
End? No. The journey doesn't end here. Death is just another path, one that we all must take. The gray rain curtain of this world rolls back and all turns to silver glass, and then you see it.
And Pippin responds, what, Gandalf? See what? Gandalf responds,
white shores and beyond, a far green country under a swift sunrise.
Well, that isn't so bad, says Pippin. And Gandalf finishes,
No, it's not.
Paul talked about a prize. And the prize, it wasn't just for Paul. The prize isn't just for Gandalf. It's for all who eagerly look forward to Jesus' final appearing. Death is something that we're all going to face, but it isn't the end. It's just another path. So as we walk forward into 2022, I think let this be a year where we can learn in a deeper way to find God in all things, even in the midst of COVID confusion, where it's sometimes not so clear what to think or what to do. And as we go forward, may we grow in authentic community. May we grow in awe and discipleship as we worship Jesus. And may his life in us bring forth mission. As the life of Jesus grows in us, a natural outworking of that is transformation. There's transformation in us. And as we're transformed, that transformation works out through us to the world around us. So just to bring things to a close this morning, I want to read through this canticle again and use this as a time of reflection. What might it look like for you practically, the outworking of this for each of us to number our days, to hold that thought in mind, and how might that impact our hearts for wisdom in the way that we go forward? So as a prayer, I'm going to read through this a couple of times, and I just invite you guys to quiet your hearts and just listen for what God might speak to you this morning. I'm just going to do a quick prayer of invitation before I read through the canticle here. But Lord, we are walking into a new year, and Lord, we don't do it alone. We do it as a faith community, and Lord, we do it with you, Emmanuel, God with us, the God who so longs to be with us and longs to be found by us. Jesus, it is your heart to reveal yourself to us. And so, Lord, I ask that you would be revealed to us. I ask that you would open our eyes. I do pray, Lord, that our souls would be awakened to the reality of you, to your work in our hearts, to your work in our community, to the healing and the revelation that you want to bring. Speak to us, Lord. And Jesus, in what way might it be wisdom for us to number our days, to hang on to those each and every day as a gift from you, something that we can appreciate and something that we can look on with gratitude? And in that place of gratitude and appreciation, Lord, what might it look like for us to apply our hearts unto wisdom? I ask, Lord, that you would speak to us. I ask for your encouragement. I ask for your direction. Teach us, dear Lord, to number our days, that we may apply our hearts unto wisdom. O satisfy us early with your mercy, that we may rejoice and be glad all of our days. And let the beauty of the Lord our God be upon us, and establish thou the work of our hands. And let the beauty of the Lord our God be upon us, and establish thou the work of our hands. Take a minute and soak that in. Teach us, dear Lord, to number our days, that we may apply our hearts unto wisdom. Today, Lord, today, good and early today, satisfy us with your mercy. Lord, your mercy is good. It's all-encompassing. It's there for us, Lord. I pray that we would be satisfied with that. Teach us to number our days, that we may apply our hearts unto wisdom, that we be satisfied with your mercy, that we could rejoice, that we could be worshiped, that we could appreciate and show gratitude and be glad all of our days. Lord, that in that place of wisdom, in that place of appreciation, we would see your beauty, and that, Lord, your beauty would be upon us, that it would shine on us, that it would shine through us. And Lord, whatever our endeavor, relational growth, relational interaction, tasks that we apply our hands to, projects we have on the go, Lord, whatever we apply ourselves to, Lord, establish thou the work of our hands. The efforts we turn ourselves to, Lord, that we would do them in partnership with you, that you would establish them, Lord. Lord, let your beauty be upon us. In Jesus' name, amen. And that wraps up my thoughts for this morning, my reflections for this morning. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen here, and we can go back to some community chat. People, if you've got thoughts or reflections or questions, now would be a good opportunity to share those, and maybe we can have some words of encouragement for one another, or maybe God will lead us in some direction for prayer. I do want to, just as I'm finishing here, I do want to throw out a community challenge. A number of us were able to gather here this morning, some were not. But I am going to challenge each of us to reach out and phone somebody from our community. I guess it doesn't necessarily have to be from our community specifically. Maybe you've got another friend from the neighborhood or from work that God might put on your heart. But I would encourage you to reach out to someone today, and not, I mean, you could fire them a text, but I'm going to encourage you to take a bigger leap than that and to actually engage, to phone them. To reach out with a phone call, talk to them on the phone, find out how they're doing, find out, where they're at. Maybe God will give you some encouragement for them you can share over the phone. But just to connect with someone. And I think that sort of connection and encouragement is something that can be a blessing to us and a blessing to whoever we reach out to. So that's my challenge for everyone this morning. And I'll open it up now for other community sharing.